Are you your own worst enemy? Too often, we men don't do the basics to be in a position of prevention, or at the very least, catching things before they get out of hand. On episode 723 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Louis Bezich and discuss his book, Saving Men from Themselves, 20 Proven Tactics with a New Approach to Living Healthy for Men Over 50. Welcome to the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, the largest and longest running health and fitness podcast dedicated to people over 40. Whether you're looking to lose weight, get stronger, or improve your health and age better, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Coach Allan, an online health and fitness coach and author of The Wellness Roadmap. Each week, we dive into practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and fitness. If you're ready to look, feel, and perform your best, no matter your age, this podcast is the perfect place to start. Let's get you on the path to a healthier, fitter, and more energetic version of yourself. I hope you'll join us each week, and together we can unlock your full potential. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast. I'm really happy you're here. This is a great conversation with Louis. I know you're going to enjoy it. I'm recording this a little early, so not much has happened since the last time we spoke. I expect that I'm going to probably be traveling when I'll be working on this episode. Otherwise, so that's why I'm doing it now. I'm going home. And it's going to take heavy explosives to get me off that island anytime soon. I want to go there and I want to bury my feet in the sand and I want to stay there. It's cold here and I don't like the cold. So it is time for this goose to fly south and stay south, even when it warms up everywhere else. I like the warm weather. I like the beach. I like my island, and I'm ready to get home to my wife and my dogs and my home. So I'm on my way, and that's kind of my big news for this week. But let's go ahead and get into the episode. Our guest today is a healthcare executive, husband, father, grandfather, part-time professor, and author with a passion for health and fitness. His devotion is a result of a lifetime of experiences that included divorce, single parenthood, and professional challenges where diet and exercise became the antidote that carried him through the tough times and ultimately enabled him to flourish personally and professionally. Decades later, what started as a coping mechanism has grown into a commitment that drives him to share his experience, promote social motivation models, and advocate for a new culture of men's health. An executive for over 40 years in the public and private sectors, he currently serves as a senior vice president and chief administration officer with Cooper University Health Care. He is an adjunct professor at the Graduate Department of Public Policy and Administration at the Camden campus of Rutgers University. He sits on various public, nonprofit, and corporate boards, including the Cornell Institute. He is the author of Crack the Code, 10 Proven Secrets that Motivate Healthy Behavior and Inspire Fulfillment in Men Over 50. He is a contributing writer on men's health at Philly Voice, where he has published over 200 columns, and a regular guest on This Is It TV podcast with Sheldon Bartlett Rumor. Over his career, he has been a featured speaker at national, regional, and local forums of professional organizations and has been featured guest on numerous television and radio broadcasts and podcasts. His TED Talk, Unleash Your Emotional Force to Live Healthy and Happy, was featured at TEDx Cape May in 2025. With no further ado, here's Louis Bezich. Louis, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Now, the name of your book, Saving Men from Themselves, 20 Proven Tactics with a New Approach to Living Healthy for Men Over 50. Woof.
It's a statement.
Why don't you just punch us in the stomach and tell us how bad we are? Because we do need saving from ourselves.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Look, one premise here, Allan, I'm a 50 plus man for sure, but part of my approach is to, on occasion, dose out a little bit of what I would call tough love, right? There's some things sometimes we need to hear, but it's all in the spirit of love and encouragement and guidance in terms of how to lead a healthy life. And most importantly, Allan, get the benefits of a healthy life. So much I talk to my guys about the end game, and the men over 50 that I've studied and surveyed. It's all about the end game. Healthy behavior is a means to an end. That end game are social aspirations, obviously a longer life, but a fulfilling life, ones that we spend time with our loved ones and are physically able to enjoy that time. In this country, there's a widening gap between our lifespan and our health span. Health span being the years that we're able to, and the healthy state to enjoy those extra years. So there's a lot to live for and a lot to talk about.
There is. Now, I'm Gen X. I'm on the top end of Gen X, and most of the folks that are over 50 are going to be Gen X for the most part. Some of them trailing into young boomers. But, we were brought up, just you do you, and if someone doesn't like it, well, tough. And so, when they started all this stuff, this talk about how masculinity was bad, we should not be masculine. We should not be masculine. And anybody who's masculine is just a bad person. I didn't buy it for a second. I went on the premise that, I am who I am. I can't really apologize for it. I've been me so long, I don't even know if I could learn how to be somebody else.
Right.
But in the book, you did talk about bad masculinity and good masculinity. Could you take us down that rabbit hole? Because you did change my mind a little bit about a couple things.
Sure, Alan. And masculinity and cultural stereotypes and cultural precedents about masculinity are so central to a man's ability to live a healthy lifestyle, at least in my experience and research I've done on men. So let's unpack that for a minute. Number one, where do we get those values of masculinity? Where do we get that definition of masculinity? Well, typically the literature and the science show it's from our dads, our parents, right? It's handed down from one generation to the next. And it's really indoctrinated in our being in many, many ways, right? And so that's why it's so tough to do anything different. That's all we know. That's all we've ever known. And that's what we watched our dads, our fathers, and other masculine figures in our life do. So that's why it's so tough to change. And what does the negative side of traditional masculinity mean? It means that, well, if you choose to go to the doctor or you're thinking about going to the doctor because you've got a pain or something, well, let's hold off on that because it might be a sign of weakness if we go, because it's not being masculine, right? Masculine definition traditionally says, well, let's hold off, let's tough it out, right? Throw a little dirt on that wound, whatever the case might be, right? Just like, traditional ball players and such, right? But now we know today that is really not a smart thing to do.
Yeah, we can't throw dirt on a prostate cancer.
Right, exactly. Well put, my friend. Right. So checkups, an annual physical, a checkup, and as we age, getting things like a prostate exam are really, really super important. I tell my guys all the time. We're in the fall. We're recording this in the fall, so it's the middle of the season. I'm a big NFL guy. I live in southern New Jersey, so we're affiliated with Philly, and my Philadelphia Eagles are having a good season. They're 7-2 as we record this. But the point being that those guys are pampered, right? They have a little twitch, and they've got doctors and therapists all around them, so that the fellows we follow, they're not apprehensive to get Medicare. And in fact, when it comes to mental health, which is really, traditional masculinity, don't ever want to admit that there's something going on in our minds that really needs some attention. Depression, anxiety, et cetera. Don't want to talk about that. But we've got examples out there in the NFL and other places now where men are acknowledging and have the strength and the courage, I would argue, to come forward with their mental health issues.
Yeah, there's been a lot of incidents, like massive incidents. You have a guy who was fantastic tight end in the NFL is suddenly murdering people. And you got, other guys that are, committing suicide, like even recently, the young man from Dallas. And so from that perspective, when they look at it, it's like, okay, well, there's my life and then there's football. And they don't want football to completely take their life. And so they're smart enough, most of them are smart enough to say, yes, I'm delicate. Make sure I'm a well-oiled machine that doesn't break and gets through this thing called the NFL career intact. And so I do see that they've gone through their dark periods when they didn't, and the injuries were there, and the mental illnesses and things that came from the concussions. They're all there.
Right.
But fortunately, the lights have been turned on and they've stepped up and said, no, that's not how I'm going to be.
Right.
And then, medical care becomes like their primary way of continuing their career and continuing to make good money.
Right. And so we had an offensive lineman a couple of years ago here in Philly by the name of Lane Johnson, who took a couple of games off. He was applauded by his teammates, again, for the courage to step forward. Right. So that's the shift that we need to make. To me, that's the shift from bad masculinity to good. The acknowledgement that the true demonstration of courage is the willingness to come forward and admit that you've got an issue, and whether it's a physical problem or mental problem. And again, that's tough to do. And the other call to action, the 50 plus said, is to convey that to the next generation. We've got to stop this migration from one generation to the next of this form of belief here, this old masculinity, and say, look, it's okay to acknowledge that. And frankly, it's okay to, be vulnerable. It's okay to have a conversation about things, again, physical or mental. And so that's the transition I think we need to make. The science shows that younger generations are a little bit more accepting of that new definition. The guys over 50 are still pretty locked in. And there's a lot of cultural winds that influence us one way or the other that, don't make this any easier. But to me, it's a generation thing we really need to address.
Yeah. Well, from your tough love perspective, it's basically don't let your ego make you stupid.
Exactly. Not a great way to put it. To not, have the ability. Yes, it's tough to make appointments. I work in healthcare, on the admin side, but I know it's tough to get appointments sometimes and such. But look, I tell, again, men all the time, like traditional definitions of manhood, we're protectors, we're providers, right? That's our role in life. But if we're not well enough to do that, then, all bets are off.
What's the point?
Yeah, what's the point, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Now, you talked about a topic that, when you're thinking about reading a man's nonfiction, you don't expect to see this word covered too much in many of them. And the word is happiness. I think most men feel like they get their happiness from accomplishments, I get that promotion, I'm happy. If I've got the pay raise, I'm happy. If I'm watching my 401k get bigger, I'm happy. And then the converse is also true.
Right.
So we think of happiness as kind of being outside of ourselves, as something we don't necessarily completely control. But in the book, you've kind of laid out 4 steps to actually take control of your own happiness.
Happiness, the research I've done, is a huge, huge motivator. What do I mean by that? Is that the science tells us that our relationships, right? Again, this is part of that end game I mentioned before, can have a huge impact, and that the quality and the vitality of those relationships can have a huge impact on our motivation and inspiration to live healthy. What do I mean by that? Look, yes, I'll take a bonus at work. I love to, my checklist. I'm a type A. I've got checklists and I check it off and it makes me feel good and all that stuff. But what makes me really feel good from the inside out, right? That emotional force. I just did a TED talk, and that emotional force within us, and leveraging that emotional force has an incredible power to sustain healthy behavior, right? So what do I translate that? I've done the math, as I call it. Do the math. I know when my oldest grandson should likely graduate from college, right? I want to be there and see that. I want to see him and then a granddaughter that I have, do well as they grow up, right? I want to travel. My men's health advocacy represents what many would call an encore career, right? These are all things that have a burning place in my heart and in my soul. And so those kinds of factors can really motivate healthy behavior. It's, the purpose behind it all. So yes, healthy behavior is tough. It takes willpower, but the science shows that, the social sciences, more than the biology and stuff that backs up medicine, are so important, right? The psychology, because that's what's behind behavior change, which is so basic and at the heart of healthy behavior. So that's what I mean, I talk about an approach and that's outside the realm. And I think, frankly, that's what differentiates my advocacy for men's health than the ones that immediately go right to diet and exercise and, that type of thing. Yes, you've got to diet, you got to have a healthy diet, and you've got to work out, but having that purpose behind it and developing the relationships. Allan, there's a ton of science that says if you've got a gym buddy or you've got a spouse that is with you in sync with your healthy behaviors, you increase the potential, you increase the likelihood of sustaining that healthy behavior over the long run. So there's a lot of social sciences behind what we're talking about.
Yeah. I tell my clients, I'm like, okay, everybody thinks peer pressure is this terrible thing, but that's only if you have terrible peers. If you have good peers, peer pressure is actually kind of cool, because you want to be a better man. You want to do better. And, when you were talking, I was thinking about this trip I took to Port of Art. I love Port of Art, particular resort there that I love going to. They treat me well. I just enjoy that week. I can completely shut my brain off for a week. And that's hard to do I'm also type A. So shutting your brain off for a week is like magic. It resets everything. And so I was traveling to they had an earthquake while we were arriving. So we're in the car, the Uber bouncing around, and we get there and everybody's outside because they've got to check out the building. And everybody's laughing and joking because apparently being in an earthquake in a swimming pool is an interesting experience. Okay. And so, they had a tsunami in the swimming pool was effectively the story. And everybody's kind of laughing and joking about what they saw and what happened, except for one woman. I see her sitting over by herself and she's bawling. She's really upset. And I know some people, natural disasters emotionally affect them and all. And no one's really talking to her. She's all by herself. So I walk over and I just ask her if she's okay. And she says, my husband is still in the building.
Cool.
They were in their room on one of the upper floors. And when the earthquake hit, they came out of their room. The elevators were out of service and he could not walk down the stairs.
Oh my.
Now she could. So she had to leave him there. But because she ran off so quickly, she left her phone. So she had no way of even checking on him to see if he was okay. And I said, well, you need me to go get him because I'll run past the guards and go get him if I have to. And she's like, no. They sent 2 guys up there to go get him. But I was thinking to myself that whole weekend, because I arrived on a weekend, I was thinking to myself, they'll never go on a vacation like this again. And this might have been their bucket list, let's travel around the world and see beautiful places. They'll definitely never stay on anything but the ground floor. But it's going to change their life. And all it would have really taken for him is years earlier when they were talking about this bucket list was actually doing the exercise and fitness stuff associated with leg strength and balance. So he would be able to do that in his 70s.
Yeah, no, look, again, I tell men all the time, whether it's protectors or providers or doing things, travel, doing things with the children or grandchildren, a common denominator across everything is the physical ability to carry out those aspirations. I can't see, that's that emotional force within us that gives us incredible motivation. But it's a puzzle, Allan, right? You've got to, again, I like to start with that, what I call the motivational platform, which is that emotional force. But then you got to build on that with, diet and exercise, and also a very, to your story just now, a very active social agenda, right? Whether it's a weekly date with your spouse, larger, family trips, whatever it is, again, the encore career, there's nothing more motivating than anticipating something coming in, right? You hear, I've got a big wedding, in 4 months. So I'm really, going to lose a few pounds and I'm going to do this. Well, that's great. But why don't we just do that all the time?
Yeah.
And if you've got an active social agenda, social calendar, that's what I call my social sustainability part or plan, right? That's what keeps us going. And so again, that's some of the tricks that I talk about in the book, which are not your common, just diet and exercise, but rather that social context that really forms that motivational platform.
Yeah. Similar to what you had said, my first grandson was born this year.
Congrats.
If he's like kids now and he doesn't get married till he's in his 30s, he's not going to get married until I'm in my 90s. And if I want to be there, I got to do some things right. And I got to take care of myself or I'm not really there, but I want to be there. And so I think that's kind of the deal, is to be thinking ahead of, okay, what is this for? It's not just for vanity, and it's not just for looking good now or feeling good now, but it is keeping yourself, and it means the events that are in your future that are going to bring you this joy and happiness. They're there. The question is, are you going to be?
Right. And, the common example I use is that we all may go, we go into our bedrooms, and on the dresser, there are the pictures, again, the spouse, they're there. How conscious are we? Have we done, like to your point, have we done the math? Do we know what age we'll be at different milestones in their lives, right? And so it's that to operationalize, so to speak, what is in the general context that really is what differentiates the approach that I aspire.
Yeah, because I know if I hadn't done what I did when I did it, I probably wouldn't have been there when my daughter was married and I was 51. The thought was there. Is like afterwards, I'm like, I probably wouldn't have been here had it not been for that change. And so it really does come down to that. Now, the next one, and I think this is one, if I didn't say it, you would have said it. See a doctor.
Yeah, look, it's, again, that's part, and you can see how through our conversation, it's like the puzzle, and there's different pieces, right? So part of that masculinity conversation spills over into see a doctor, right? At a minimum, get an annual physical, right? And as we age, if you get that annual physical, your doctor will say to you, you had your prostate exam, have you done any blood work, urinalysis, all the requisite things that we need to do. And it's amazing that, men shy away from that, they poo it. And one thing, Allan, that's really interesting is because some of the science will tell us that men are concerned about, well, if I get a test done, I might find something. And they're a little taken aback by that. Well, you want to find it sooner or you want to find it later? Yeah. But it's amazing that, the kind of excuses and sort of the mindset. And again, to me, that all stems from that traditional handed down from father to son view of masculinity that still is ingrained in us. And that's why we got to shake it and get there. Look, and part of it is, find a doc that you're comfortable with, find a doc that you can have a conversation with, right? Because all kinds of things go wrong as we age, right? And some of the stuff is kind of personal, and it may take a little bit of courage to say, look, some parts are not working, doc. So you want to be able to have that, and you want to be as open as possible, because they can't help you fix something if they don't know that it's broken or there's even any issues, whether, again, it's in the mind or the body.
Yeah. And another reason why I think it's really important to have the right conversations with them is that most of them feel like pill vendors. Tell me what your problem is and I'll give you a pill. And that's not going to solve this problem. If we really want to be healthy and we want to do this right, we want to go in and have good, open conversations with the doctor. And then if there's treatment protocols we need to be doing, then we do them. If we're good, we're good. We leave that conversation knowing, okay, I've done the things I'm supposed to do. I'm going to keep doing them, and I'll talk to you next year. But you don't know till you have that sit down.
And I would hearken that almost every doctor, every piece of literature and science I've read suggests that, and Eric Topol, who's got a new book out on the market, has said that exercise is like the most effective medicine that we know. And it can impact a world of different ailments or issues and give you greater longevity, help your cognitive skills, the whole 9 yards. So it cuts across the board. And again, if you have a doc that you don't feel comfortable with or is not inclined to talk to you about things, then shop around and find another doc. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, because the pills might help us live longer, but they're definitely not going to help us live better. The exercise will do both.
Exactly. And there, even today with the GLP, there's some great drugs coming onto the market. And don't get me wrong, that are making an impact on obesity in this country. It's down just a smidgen. But even if you on the GLP drugs, you still need to exercise and tone that body that's lost some weight.
Even more so because the GLP-1s, short of doing resistance training for anyone over 40, because we're dealing with sarcopenia. If we're on a GLP-1 and you're not doing resistance training and getting adequate protein,
Yeah.
it's a frailty drug.
Yeah.
You're basically taking a drug that's making you frail, even as a man. And that's not a good look.
Nope.
If you want to be masculine, you don't want to look frail, for sure.
Exactly.
So you want to be doing the resistance training, retain the muscle while you lose the fat, and then you're going to have better body composition when you're done. A lot of people get on these GLP-1s, their body composition actually gets worse.
They come up with different names for that look.
Yeah.
So again, nothing wrong with them. And that's another reason to see your doc if you're in a position where you think that GLPs might help you. But again, my guess is that the doc is also going to say, look, do the resistance training, do some cardio. I mean, it's a full...
And don't ignore them this time.
Yes. Yes. How about this one now? Do what the doctor suggests you should do. Follow the doctor's orders. And, so it's half the prescriptions that get written don't even get filled. I mean, that's another whole discussion that we could have.
All right. So, in the book, this is probably the hardest thing in the book. I mean, going to the doctor's tough, but most men, if they have a woman in their life, she's forcing the issue in many cases. So, but we don't like to admit we can't do something. We don't like to admit that we're not going to succeed in the thing we set ourselves to do. But you talked about the importance of understanding pivots.
Now, there's no doubt about it that as we age, if you're a marathon runner, as you age, you may have to cut back to do a half marathon, a 10K, a 5K, just to use a pretty straightforward example. And there's all sorts of other applications to that. And so that's fine. We just want to acknowledge that and be prepared to pivot and thrive in that pivot, right? And again, whether it's cardio and running or any other aspect of life, it's part of the equation. It's a good thing. And the point is that it maintains the quality of life. It maintains that fulfillment that we're trying to achieve. And it's a good thing. And again, the extent to which you can get your, what I call a man's loving constituency, not to digress, but the other point that I think I want to make sure your listeners know is that, guys, it's not all about you, right? Because it's like, I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't want to have to eat things that I like to eat. How about the people that actually care about your sorry butt? Believe it or not, guys, there are spouses and children and nieces and nephews and colleagues that really do care about you. And they'd like to have you around as long as possible. So, it's important that you keep that in mind, because to me, again, that's a great motivator and give you a great sense of purpose there.
Now, how would someone recognize when one of these pivots is something they should do, or rather they're just letting up? Because that feeling's got to be there. Sure.
Well, if it's a physical thing, you're going to feel it, right? If it's how much weight you're lifting for your resistance training, if it's, for example, there's a 10K race that I used to run on a regular basis that would literally go over a bridge between New Jersey and Philadelphia and back. And that bridge, believe it or not, has you don't feel it when you're in a car, but when you're running out there, it feels like Mount Everest, right? My knees, which are generally in pretty good shape, but when I would run that, we call the bridge run, they would hurt pretty much. So I kind of cut back on that a little bit. And, 5Ks are my forte these days. So if it's a physical thing, you're going to literally feel it, but it also can be a mental thing. Stress is an important thing we need to manage in our lives. And so again, as we record this, the holidays are not that far away. And one of the things that we talk a lot about to our men is to, how can we stay healthy and manage the holidays? And one of the things that the experts will tell you is be prepared, and it's okay to say no, right? No to the third Christmas party this week, or no to the task that, you've done for 30 years and now you need to pivot, or maybe it's a smaller tree or whatever the case might be. It doesn't mean that the experience, whether it's the holidays or anything else, is less fulfilling, but that pivot is something that really helps you sustain the level of enjoyment. You don't want to get hung up over, okay, I'm putting up a 4-foot tree instead of a 8-foot tree this year. Oh my goodness, I'm a bad person. Just okay. It's part of life. And in my first book, Crack the Code, I used a lot of sports analogies where major league pitchers, who last a long time in the major leagues, they can't throw a fastball anymore. So they may develop a curve or a knuckleball or other things to sustain their career, well into in some cases, into their 40s. And so to me, it's the same thing. It's learn to pivot, learn to adjust, and still get that level of fulfillment that you're looking for.
Louis, I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are 3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
Number one, Allan, as we've said today, but I want to reinforce it, is develop that motivational platform. Look at your social relationships. Maybe have a conversation with your spouse or somebody else you're close to about identifying what's most important in your life. What are those milestone events coming up? What are the day-to-day activities that really build fulfillment? I love going out and over the weekend with my wife to grab a dinner out and just kind of relax and chill. So build that motivational platform, populate it with a lot of social activities and have a robust social agenda. That's number one. Number two is, yes, go to the doctor. Have that benchmark, where are you? What can you do? What should you stay away from? Are there any particular issues, in terms of your body that you need to attend to? Get yourself checked out, get all the tests done. And then 3, that's when you then turn to diet and exercise and, pick a diet that you're comfortable with. I follow a Mediterranean diet and recommend that to a lot of guys because it suggests sometimes there's little tweaking of definitions, but the bottom line is that I advocate for a Mediterranean diet because it doesn't mean that you can't have a piece of meat once in a while. You're not being a vegetarian or a vegan, right? And you can have a little bit of variety there. A lot of it is about proportion size and things like that. On the exercise piece, whether it's a gym, whether it's running around the block, whatever the case might be, think about, your day-to-day lifestyle. For me, based on when I first got into this stuff, I had a lot of night meetings. So I had to become an early morning exercise person, which I, maintain to this day, because that's how you sustain things. And then you can supplement that by, again, if you've got a spouse, if you got a gym buddy or whatever, somebody that can work with you and hold you accountable, and you hold them accountable. But it takes it from you don't want exercise to be drudgery, right? You want it to be something you look forward to, something that's embedded into your daily habits, routines, and rituals. And really, you want to get to the point where if you fall off your diet and, miss it for a few days, or you miss the exercise, you don't feel comfortable, right? You feel not as well that day. There's something off if you haven't worked out or you haven't sustained the diet. So that's where you want to get to with that. So again, build your motivational platform, get checked out by the doc so you know where you're at, and then go to the diet and exercise. And then ultimately, you can supplement that, and it's in the book, things like, making sure you get good sleep. I love the cold rinse. If you can sustain a habit of at least a cold rinse when you're in the shower, it can really invigorate you, and a whole lot of other tactics out there. And again, maintain those relationships. That's super important.
Great. Thank you, Louis. If someone wanted to learn more about you, learn more about your book, Saving Men from Themselves, where would you like for me to send them?
They can find me on social media at Louis Bezich. And on my website, louisbezich.com, you'll see what's going on with the new book and all my other activities, the TED Talk I referenced before. We got a lot going on, but a lot to share, Allan.
Great. Thank you, Louis. And thank you for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
If you enjoyed today's show, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you would, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. It really does make a big difference in helping people find this podcast and know that it's worth their time. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time to leave us a rating and review. Thank you. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Jolie Glassman and discuss her book, 101 Rules for Being the Champion of Your Life. Life according to the rules of boxing. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.